Kia ora everybody, what's up? It is Robett. Welcome to Robett Live episode. Oh, got some music playing. Got music, happy with that. This is a last minute pivot. This is 2020 has been the year of the pivot, of the change and shift in directions. This wasn't supposed to be a live Robett show, but we've had some technical difficulties of an interview that I was supposed to be doing somewhere else. So my tech's come to the rescue. So what we are here to do that I was going to be interviewed on is BDO is doing a Maori business survey. So without a doubt, welcome to the show. Hello, Kylee. How are you?
I'm good, Robett. How are you?
So now let's flip it. So let's pretend, because you had quite a good intro the other time. So now let's pretend this is your show I was going to be on, and we go from there. Go for it.
Ka pai. Okay then. So how we were actually going to start today through the BDO technology was to really introduce the Maori sector report that has come out today. It is really the voice of the market. Last year in BDO, we thought a lot about what the market wanted, and then we had this moment. We said, well, why don't we just ask the market? BDO covers a whole lot of SMEs across New Zealand, so we're in that small to mid-market, and we just wanted to know what was going on, what people were up to, and what was happening. So last year, it gave us some great feedback. This year, we thought, okay, let's ask again. And keep in mind, last year in New Zealand, it was all about diversity, and race relations was really high in the New Zealand media and commentary because of the very sad events that happened down in Christchurch. This year, however, we're into what I'm calling the year of the virus. So our questions were of a similar theme as last year, but with flavours around how are people coping with COVID in business. And, you know, it was fantastic. The feedback last year highlighted that Maori in business really take a multi-layered approach to business. They are really socially focused and they care for the people and the planet. This year, what we've seen, and we're attributing it to the COVID event, is they've just lifted their sights a bit more on the profit piece and said, well, if we're going to be resilient and we're going to have a sustainable business, how do we do that when we're looking after our people, we're looking after our planet? Actually, we also need to make sure that our profits are sustainable to support those activities. So that led to me going, well, if we're going to launch this report, you know, who is it that I'd like to talk to about their view of business? And Robett, you came to mind. You are young, you are Maori, you are global, you are ticking all the boxes, you do tech. Hello, we're in the podcast now, which thank you for that. So I actually thought to myself, well, I need to kōrero with Robett about this. But before we do, I think I should do a quick karakia to kick us off. And I'm going to do ko te kupu, ko te atua, ko rangi nui ki runga, ko papatūnuku ki raro. Ka mate ai te tangata, ka pō, ka ao, ka awatea. Mauri ora. Now that karakia is symbolic of us as humans. We rise, we live, we die, and then the sun rises another day and we come back up. And so the life cycle goes, it goes around. And I thought that was really quite important in the year of the virus. I think we have really, as a nation in New Zealand, got focused on the people. But equally, what I love about in Māori when we start our kōrero and we do a karakia is we bring gratitude into the meeting. And that just puts us into a space to have a real open mind and to debate, discuss, and come out with some great solutions. So, Robett, I'm mindful that I'm actually in your whare, but I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, tell us a bit about yourself, and I'll do that off the back of, I read your spin-off article the other day, and I just thought, you know, ka pai you, that's awesome. It's always really hard to put yourself out there, quite a vulnerable thing to do. Which I knew when I was going to interview you, you're used to being the interviewer and not the interviewee. So if you went over in San Fran, I'd be giving you a big hug right now to say, aroha mai, my friend, you're in safe hands. But, you know, you have had an exceptional journey in life. You're very young, and the things that you have done in your life so far, you know, is outstanding. And I noticed your post this morning around it being Mental Health Awareness Week. And you putting it out there that, you know, you're just like the rest of us, you know, you have had your challenges in life, the good and the bad. And, you know, for us to really, what I took from it, Robett, was let's all be kind to each other because you don't know the journey another person has walked. But I have to say, for me, you're still outstanding in what you've achieved and make me very proud. Of course, I have to put this in here that you are Ngāti Porou. Yeah, so go, brother. We are whānau. So I'm hugely proud. And, you know, from people who are Ngāti Porou back home, we're always extremely proud of people like you that go out there and walk the talk. So over to you. Tell us a bit about yourself.
It's, You've cracked the code, because I don't, as much as I talk, I really don't like talking about me, like the actual stuff of it. And, you know, the spin-off thing, the feedback of it was pretty crazy, because I really didn't actually want to do it, which is ironic when it's about, you know, I very much believe, you know, I've always said, you know, New Zealand wins when New Zealanders win. But then sometimes when you're winning, you don't really want to be sort of, I guess, proud or loud about it. So yeah, I get my own tension I'm battling with myself still, which is kind of, you know, part of the journey. But yeah, I mean, super quick nutshell, whānau from Ngāti Porou, Waipiro Bay, population of 26, watch out. And then Whānau Dargaville till I was 4, Fiji till I was 9, then Aranui Christchurch. Finished high school, went into this professional snowboard world, and was fortunate enough to travel the world, and kind of had a whole life, really, like a separate sort of just dream fairy scenario situation. You wake up and you're 19, you got a black credit card, you're flying around the world doing anything you want. It's pretty trippy. And now I guess, you know, they came back to Auckland, to New Zealand, did some business stuff there, media company, which I eventually exited to Saatchi & Saatchi, and then built a bunch of co-working shared workspaces for tech startup businesses to help, you know, startups get from the bedroom to the boardroom kind of scenario in my head, which went good too. And then the last 2 years, I've kind of been off the grid, really. My wife's from San Fran. Been over here, had baby number 2, so now I got 2 babies under 3, which is pretty crazy. And then this last 6 months has been no travel, no city, no nothing, no people, no high fives, no hugs. You know, New Zealand's had 2 little lockdowns while I'm on month 6 of not essentially doing anything. So yeah, it's definitely a different world. You know, you see the year of the virus, it's like the year of the shit show, because it's the combination of the intersection of, you know, you've got politics, you've got pandemics, you've got protests, you've got recession, you've got health, you've got a virus. You know, there is so much at play in the same time that, you know, I think a lot of people are going through a lot. So where I sit now is, you know, I've got access to a lot of cool stuff with a lot of great people, lots of cool opportunities. So appreciate the chance to be on my tech on your show.
Oh, ka pai you, Robert. So just really quickly before I get into some of the more meatier comments is, you know, that having 2 children under 3, and in your life journey and your story, you know, you've had a lot happen to you, and you've done a lot of contribution. But how different is it being a father to 2 little bubbers under 3?
I put a post about this a while ago. I genuinely think it is tougher to people can have kids, but it's hard to be a parent, you know, and you can tell the way certain people talk about their kids, whether they're present or not and whatever. And for me, a big one was I wanted to be a present father. And the thing I probably maybe learned the most is probably the instant perspective shift that you have around, that it's about them and not you, that every single waking moment of everything is, you know, the way I kind of feel is like, you know, your capacity for love and care gets so much more exponentially bigger, because it gives you a different perspective shift, which you never have thought about. So perspective was one, presence was the other. And so those would be probably the 2. And then as well, just the simple little things of slowing down to enjoy more smaller moments instead of trying to wait for the big pops, if that makes sense, you know? Like,
yeah. How has that changed the way that you think, Roby, in business? How's it have you found a big mindset change for yourself?
Probably more calculated, because I treat time differently. You know, without kids, when you can just smack out 20 hours a day and you're just there on a computer screen or whatever you're doing, it's very much, you take as much time as you want to take. But, when you've got limited time gaps of either a kid's sleep and you've got 45 minutes to try and just knock shit out or whatever, you become way more efficient with your time. And then all of a sudden you ask yourself, what was I doing with all that free time? And then so you kind of get a bit bummed with yourself for maybe not being as productive as you could be, which is, I know, probably not the smartest thing to say or do, but it makes you question, priorities with time and energy, and that's probably one of the main things. But yeah, I think as well, it's a combination of that plus, as you have more business and life experience, you probably see things a little bit differently. So my patience has increased dramatically, and also maybe a bit more of the strategic pieces with where I play and what I do.
Can't buy. Similar for me, I've got a 4-year-old, and the whole timekeeping piece, I'm the most efficient person that I have ever been in my life. And I have had moments of wondering what I did with all those hours where I felt so under the pump and that I had no time in my life. I had so much time. So I'm so grateful for my daughter for bringing that awareness for me to the fore. But equally, it's been great for me in cutting out the things that I'm going to say no to. And I am a person who struggles to say no. I say yes to everything. So she taught me a great lesson that actually I had to say no if I was going to put her first. That had to be a part of my vocabulary. And I'm still learning on that journey. And she's just such a great teacher for me. Yeah.
Yeah. It definitely it changes, but it's good. Yeah.
So one thing that the Māori sector survey has told us last year and this year is that, Māori do sustainability in business really well. And the majority of people who responded are small business owners. So they employ 5 or less people. As a bit of an outlier, we did have some iwi responses. So what they told us that I felt really proud of last year was that they really have a social focus on people and the environment. The lifting of the sites on profits, I was pleased to see that it wasn't over and above those two, but it was to realign, to bring them up. So, and I likened it to the mahi you did around the tall poppy syndrome. Profits can sometimes be seen to be this really dirty word, and no one likes to talk about them. And I think that is inherent in us as New Zealanders as we have that tall poppy syndrome. So I know you did a lot of work around the high schools in New Zealand to really get the youth of New Zealand to think about that and think about not living in that space and really celebrating success. So I just wanted to get some insights for you and your business. Does that reflect and resonate for you? And how are you doing things differently? I noted that in the article, in the spin-off, it said at 28, you sort of had this moment of sitting in this high-rise office and going, wow, I've made it. But maybe in your own mind, the way I read it was you thought, have I really made it? Is this what it's about? Is this where I'm at? And I sort of see through your journey that you've taken this more social approach and focus once you sort of hit that peak. So talk to me about your approach to business during COVID. Has it changed the way you're thinking? What are your thoughts around sustainability, ensuring that you have balance in anything that you do that gives positive impact towards people, planet, and profits?
Pretty loaded question there. I'll try and unpack a little bit. I guess maybe the first one is the acknowledgement that comes within the culture, within commerce. It's usually led by community first in some way, with the care for others, and there's always a tangible not a give back, but looking out for sort of one another that doesn't exist commercially in other races to the same sort of degree that I've seen anyway, and just with what it's, I guess, about. So the first bit, I'm not surprised at all that everyone's wanting to, the social good and the community and the planet and that's 100%. But the sound bites of what some bigger companies talk about for those things are so misaligned to the reality. And then usually there's the thing of, you will hear the, big gnarly corporate guy or girl talking about all this stuff, which they don't actually give a shit about. And then you've got the people who are talking about actually trying to do something, but on such a small, scale. as well as it does profits. Do you know what I mean? It seems like there's still a bit of a disconnect between the biggest companies in the world, potentially. Those that care the most usually aren't the ones that have the most capital maybe behind it. And so I always get intrigued with the tension between creation of profits that talk about it being for the people, but genuinely actually trying to help it. So that I just find that interesting when I look at different businesses. I think you're right. Most of the things I've always done has been a combination of social, but to the point where it's around people and community. Like I love the concept of when you can create platforms for others to help grow in a small way, those little breadcrumbs of positivity or whatever it is that you help in their life can just be one small little sort of step in the right direction for a better opportunity or better relationship or better lives. So that's always been really big for me, always from day one. And so maybe how I've approached it through this, I guess my biggest challenge potentially commercially over this last 6 months is most of my value for the majority of the time is if I'm physically present. If I'm physically there with someone in a room, whether it be a keynote at different conferences or board meetings or creative sessions or events, whatever it may be. And so a big one for me was trying to think about how I could reset and build almost like a virtual empire with the intent of what I know I represent, but without me physically having to be there. And that's quite a tough thing to do when you've only ever seen the value commercially if you've physically been in a location. So strategically, that's actually been quite tricky, right? Like, how do you scale intent of what you represent, not necessarily what you do? And so I think, culturally, it's great to see that, profits aren't a bad thing, and they're wanting to address that further up the food chain, and I totally agree. But then the second pivot off is, well, in this new world of, I'm not saying it's a stop-go lollipop economy of yay, no, whatever. I just think the games have changed a little bit with how business can be done. Like I was just having a meeting before, and they were saying, their new CEOs just said, yep, 50-50 work from home if you want. We don't care. As long as the output gets done, whatever. And that's a huge change from 12 months ago for a big business. And so I think there's a lot of, so culturally, yes, agree. I think that balances off. And then commercially, the 90% strategy and then actually committing to the execution is probably how I would probably craft it up.
Cool. I was just interested in getting your thoughts on that, Robbie, given that you are, you are Maori and you are in business, and the survey's talking to us and saying some things, and I was just kind of quite curious as to your thoughts around that, really just to add to the conversation. Because I find with anything that we do, there's always more than one way to skin a cat. Sorry for a bad old analogy. And I think it's about us all equally coming in and working and playing to our strengths in what we do in business. And, one thing I do find with our Māori clients at the fore is always their whānau. So I've been working on a concept lately around a way of a business mindset, and in the New Zealand context, I'd call it a whakapapa-based mindset. So I'm looking at the fact that, through Rangi the Sky Father and Papa the Earth Mother were children born, and we all descend from those children, whether it's a tree, a bird, a fish, or a human. So when we're as Māori, we go into business and we have this whakapapa-based mindset of how is my action going to create a positive impact on my whakapapa, we are inherently caring for our fellow people and planet. And I think this is my own analogy that through colonisation, we lost sight of the fact that we're quite entrepreneurial and we are good business people. The narrative that has come through the years, or the negative narrative, is that we're not. So I see within Māoridom, it's about lifting our self-belief and our ability to be good in business. But equally to be good in business, but do good with what we can do and achieve. And I'm really heartened, because I feel like that's going back to an old mindset. So we're not relearning something new. It's an old mindset, and we just need to traverse back. And I think for me, when the survey came through and I saw that site getting lifted, I felt hopeful in my heart that is where Māori in business we're starting to traject, whether consciously or unconsciously.
Well, I've got a bit of an add-on to that, which I think not many people are truly realizing in a commercial sense, is that I think now culture is becoming the biggest underutilized asset in business that was seen as a liability, and commercially it's starting to make more sense for those to embrace that. But the problem is that I'm seeing anyway is there's a very fine line between embracing of culture for community and commercial gain versus potential exploitation of those that actually want to leverage it for back to profits, because it's basically a new lever they can pull, right? Whether it be a diversity thing or the whatever it is as well. And so I always get I'm starting to get a little bit more bullish on the awareness piece to let people in their businesses know that culture is the biggest asset right now. Because let's say for technology, if everything gets democratized out and everything goes flat and everyone can do anything anywhere in the world, anyone's got the same amount of tech, the only thing that matters is the story, the people, the culture, and the curation. And kudos points for shifting it around so you get the BDO in there so the marketing team won't get you told off later. So I appreciate that. Well done.
I'll get a growling.
Yeah, I get it. And not that, and I'll just say this has not been paid. We're just friends. I'm always happy to help to have a conversation with crew. And I think that is a huge part though. So I'm on offense for businesses to realize that they should embrace it because it genuinely separates themselves from everyone else. Simultaneously, I go on defense because I don't want to feel like culture's getting exploited from those that genuinely don't give a shit. And it got to the point where I remember a situation recently, without saying names, there was a big international conglomerate who strategized to put a brown face in front of a new pop-up agency to win government RFPs without ownership actually being driven by that. So if international publicly listed conglomerate, hey, there's some money in this culture shit, let's put some face in front of it that gives us a good shot here, and then they got the engine. So I think it's really, then I get on defense because they confront saying that they're helping culture, but actually it's exploiting culture. And so all I would say is just question, are they trying to empower or exploit?
Yeah, good point, Robbie. And I think that's the fine line that that we as Maori walk every day when we ask ourselves, and our ego comes into play. You know, you get these big players and they say, well, have I got the deal for you? And this is great. And you get quite caught up in that narrative. And I think on my own personal journey, I learned lessons about that along the way. And I learned to say no when it just didn't actually, I started to learn to listen to my body. My body would tell me first and foremost if something wasn't right. And I took quite a bit of time to learn how to listen to when my body was saying, this is not right. And to decline politely and thank people for opening up that opportunity, but to also know that, there's an element of cultural exploitation. And I'm so proud as an Ngāti Porou wahine because, man, our wahine can sense it a mile away, and you can, boom, on social media, next thing you'll see a post and they'll call it out real quick. So, so I always know that I don't have to be the bastion for making sure that cultural misappropriation doesn't happen, because I've got a wide iwi around me. And equally, New Zealand, iwi as a whole will call it out. So, I take heart that I'll do my piece, and then my iwi around me will help sort out the areas that I am not aware of or haven't seen. So in New Zealand at the moment, Robert, we talked about, this year of the virus and how quickly people are mobilising into tech, and equally how tech has helped bring trust into business. So, the business you spoke of earlier that said, hey, look, 50% can go home. My experience is pre-COVID, there was this element of, but they won't work. They'll go home and they'll clean their houses, and are we going to get productivity? Well, COVID brought about this need to actually just say we've got no choice. Off people went, and this huge level of trust came out, is what we witnessed here in BDO, where we mobilised our crew all to work from home. And I do have to say that we're really grateful that we're able to do that. There's some industries that don't have that luxury, but we did, and we used that, and this huge amount of trust came in. Now in the narrative we're seeing in the New Zealand context is it's all about building on the tech tools that we can use to continue that journey to mobilise ourselves, to become paperless. People in the cities are loving the fact that they don't have to run their motor vehicle into the city and burn all that fossil fuel to get there, and they can be just as productive from home, and they feel a sense of doing good for the environment. So, for me, you are like the tech guru. I do have my good friend Barry Suter, who keeps it real for me in the tech space. But tech. What are your thoughts on tech and the way forward and the role it's going to play in, say, not only the New Zealand economy, but the global economy going forward?
Man, once again, a nice little loaded question, but I appreciate the directness. I think probably two parts to it. One, back on the thing around trust, is if a leader's questioning staff's ability not to be able to execute, I actually think they're asking the wrong question. Like I had a situation extremely recently, because it was 2 days ago, and the conversation was, let's just make this outputs driven and we're going to find out in 30 days anyway. Go nuts. Next. And so I think what's happening from a leadership perspective is, it depends what size of the business too, because I didn't realize, it wasn't until I saw a bigger company behind the scenes that people would actually hide in businesses where actually employees that wouldn't do anything and they were a total waste of space. They shouldn't have been there anyway. But that's why structures exist for certain crew that basically are hiding within an ecosystem. So before I'd question with leaders, what size is the business and what is the smartest approach around doing it. I can understand structure for bigger businesses. If there's, hundreds and thousands of employees and there's, a million pieces moving everywhere, it's very easy to hide. So as long as there's visibility and accountability regardless of the scale, you should be fine. But also for the smaller ones, I just think it's super interesting. Like right now, this next little thing I'm doing is just like, okay, well, this is what we've got to get done. KPIs on all, go nuts. I trust you to do your thing, and see in a month, we'll find out. So I think that would be my approach. Or else all that happens is you end up overstressing yourself into what are they doing right now and and then next thing you know, you're worried more about HR bullshit instead of actually the fundamentals of what your business should be focused on, right? So I guess that's like the headspace, so you can focus on the doing of the business. That's the first piece. The second one in terms of the tech side is, I think one of the biggest dangers we have in business at the moment with COVID is the forced pressure that's been forced upon people who haven't wanted it to have to adopt digital solutions which they didn't even know existed. So obviously I live and breathe tech, and I'm sure a lot of my crew do. I've got a friend of mine who's in the real estate game, and he's got a couple hundred people underneath him, yada yada yada. Half of the people didn't know what Microsoft Teams even meant. So you're talking about a huge disconnect of $1 billion real estate thing with hundreds of these people. These are fully grown adults that are going around with children and kids and mortgages, blah, blah, blah. And, overnight they have to pivot into a world and they don't even know the name of one of the core, so I think the digital literacy got challenged overnight, and it put a lot of leaders into some really uncomfortable positions. What I have seen on the comeback is there's been two types of leaders. The first is, stuff you, we're going back to how it was, because we've got our way and this is just a 6-week break. And the other half is very similar to the other CEO of, hey, these tools are essentially just a tactic to help our business get smarter or better. Let's use, tech as a tool. Tech isn't a business model. Tech creates efficiencies. Technology creates more empowerment and enablement within organizations and businesses. But tech is not a strategy. And I think there's a big sort of disconnect between some of the leaders just thinking that, if we just integrate tech. So that's on one half of it. And the other side of it is then probably just not getting too scared in the sound bites of what this tech future will be, that they just put the handbrake up and don't even try to learn any of it and just block everyone out, instead of actually just really saying, okay, well, what's an action that we can take right now? Should all of our files for our customers potentially be on the cloud somewhere? That's probably a smart thing. Okay, cool. Maybe our IT infrastructure should be set up in the cloud to be able to remote activate and deactivate. That probably sounds like a good idea. Should our invoicing be automated through Xero, MYOB or whatever, so there's visibility and accountability? Probably. I don't think people, they create this massive digital chasm, I think, is that the word, this massive flipping canyon in the middle of what they think they need to do, instead of just taking one step of let's move to the cloud. One step of let's put things in shared drives. One thing of okay, let's start some streaming, So it's offense or defense, and the majority I've seen have been forced into offense for the last couple of months, and now they're going back into defense and retraction mode because now you might be hitting a little recession. GDP's going down, people are stressing out. So I hope that answers both sides of that extremely loaded question.
Yeah. Hey, I think it's really interesting. I love your thought around, 30 days, you'll find out. You'll find out whether or not people are playing it or whether or not they're in there with good intent. So absolutely love that thought. One thing I experienced, what I thought was fantastic during COVID lockdown was, I work primarily with Maori land, and so we have a governance crew over a land block, and the average age is around about 65, 70. So I had to mobilise these people really quick into using Zoom. I went for the Zoom tool because it was more commonly known in New Zealand, and I felt I had a better chance with that than MS Teams at the time. And you know what? They did it. They're amazing. I was like, I'm now hosting Zoom hui, or we call them in New Zealand Zooies. With this Kaumātua crew who are linking in. Now, admittedly, they forget to turn their microphones off, and we get a lot of feedback, and we work through that. And I say to them, I can't hear them, and they're telling me it's my end, but that's all good. The fact that they connect is amazing. But I think you're right. We are seeing in New Zealand a little bit of resistance now. I think the stat came out the other day to say that they saw 5 times the movement in tech during our COVID lockdown moments of pace. That was just unbelievable. Everyone couldn't believe. But I am seeing resistance now, where people have moved back into offices, back into their desks and seats, and they're kind of saying, do we need that now? Because we're not in lockdown anymore. So yeah, that's going to be interesting, I think, for us in New Zealand. And the government is putting funding essentially in to try and unlock, if cost is a problem, for businesses to implement tech as a way to get efficiency. So we're on an interesting journey, I think, like everyone is globally, and only time will tell to see how successful it's been.
Quickly on that, the leaders and owners of these businesses are just quickly deciding, do I actually need this lease, or do I go virtual? Oh, do I actually need all that potentially unnecessary management layers from a people-to-people basis? Potentially not. So there's a lot of those questions. So part of it as well, you need to understand of a lot of times executives or boards or CEOs sometimes won't do what's best for the actual business because it's not good for them. And then usually that's based on how their roles are structured. So usually I don't necessarily not care. I would rather be more interested in the levers that are making them personally do their role than what the fancy strategic documents are saying that they will be doing in the public, because usually there's a massive disconnect between what they're saying they're doing and the fact of a shareholder price being a direct relation back to the executives bonus towards the end of the year. And I think those, things I've seen.
Yeah, and I think that's that fine line stuff, that we talked about earlier, walking that fine line between getting that sustainable profit, people, planet balance, and doing it authentically, not making it a good marketing tool. So I'm really conscious of time for you, Robett, but I do have one last question, and I suppose it's in the theme of it being Mental Health Week, is really about wellbeing in business. Do you think the two can live together? And if you do, how do you think that works, and what might the pros and cons be?
Loaded once again. Is it possible? Yes, of course. Of course it's possible. It's just not easy. And I think the classic will be the average survivor will have a weekly whip with the manager or some shit every 15 minutes, whatever, but you won't talk to a good mate in 8 months. Why is that? It's like, well, I think it's because your brain doesn't treat your personal life like your professional life. I mean, I think sometimes there's skills and tactics and tricks and structures which you should use for your personal life. You should treat it similar things. So I book in time pretty much every time I drive from basically the studio here back to my house. I ring someone and I'm talking to someone that I know personally. My phone goes on do not disturb at 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock, whatever, at 7 o'clock, and you can't get me. unless you're on my favorites or my inner circle. My phone does not go into my room at night. Doesn't happen. I've got a $20 little voice recorder that goes next to it, and anything that's in my head gets out. Done. You need to set up. I try and meditate every day if I can. Try and hydrate, do a bunch of stuff. I treat my personal time like a business as well. I structure out solo set times for me to strategize with myself, and chuck my headphones on, have a nice Pinot Noir. I have my little moleskin book right here that I and I'll plan things out. So I think that is it possible? Yes. Is it hard? Yes. But I want to play business till I'm 150. I don't want to die in 10 years because I'm overweight and stuffed and my blood pressure's through the flipping roof and I'm stressed out by my mind and I'm eating like shit and I don't see my family and everyone hates me and blah, 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 blah. Like that doesn't sound like fun. So I think you need to proactively take a professional approach to your personal life to actually get balance, but it is 100% doable. But the majority of people don't, and they get stuck in consumption modes of things that don't matter instead of proactive creation modes of things that do.
Awesome, Robbie. There was some really awesome tips in there. I think that, that our listeners, when they get a chance to see this, will really take away some of those. These are all business people who, like you say, put a very professional lens over what they do in their day-to-day life. But yeah, taking that into your personal life, what a really good way of looking and thinking about it. Because, at the end of the day, our well-being is everything. And like you say, it does impact our longevity.
Yep.
And something for us as Maori, where we do live shorter lives than the average New Zealander. And, I often wonder about the weight we carry when we're carrying our whakapapa on our shoulders. And I know there's a multi-factors to that story, but, that could be a piece that's not helping us in our longevity journey. So, yeah, words of wisdom. Lastly, I just sort of wanted to know from you, what would be your off-the-cuff 5 tips for me to lift my social media game?
5 tips. If you're a small, some simple ones would be, on LinkedIn, you can get a custom URL for your own profile page. So it could be, linkedin.com/in/Kylee, Kylee P, Ngāti Parai, whatever you want to do. That's a simple one. I think what it feels like most people do on social, that when there's a relation to business, is they post because they want something from others, not posting to give something to others. There's always like a give and take, but it feels the majority of those that post in business are very much click here for a promo code link, hit me up and I can sell your house, hit here for a discount code on this, 2-for-1 special, do that. And that's not really a relationship. The biggest mistake I think people make is they treat the platform like a transaction, not a relationship. And the other part to it is people talk about patience, but they're not at all. They want the conversion of the ROI for the quarter, for the project, for the campaign. They don't understand brand. They don't understand context. They don't understand, the long game of how things actually work. So by the time, if no one can question your intent behind something when you actually do have something you potentially sell. The problem is people don't have the patience to it because they want the results. I guess it's like, if I've got, got a bit of a beer belly at the moment, but if I want to flip and straight 6-pack, it's not happening tomorrow. It means my ass has to start running every day and doing this, and then I'll get it over time. People aren't patient, and people post for themselves, not for others. And people are basically on the sell train instead of the give train. And weirdly enough, when it's around relationships, especially in New Zealand, when everyone knows everyone, that game makes a lot more sense. Because you need to understand, in the States, you can never pick up the phone and get to a decision maker ever, because there's hierarchy and hundreds of millions of people and zones and sections and regions and like you cannot get in unless you're in already, right? But in New Zealand, because everyone knows everyone, I can guarantee that the 2 degree thing, you could guarantee get to the marketing manager of any company within 1 day if you actually wanted to, because you will know someone somewhere to do it. And so it's just weird because it feels like the game is rigged in New Zealand, but people are still treating it as if it's not, and they don't leverage it for their own needs. So that would be some of them. And then also, in a nutshell, if there's a strategy for it, is regardless what brand you have or what you're trying to sell or anything, the game plan on social is pretty simple. It's, how do you, convert community into customers through content with context. That's it. So how do you create content with context to convert community into customers? Lots of C's in there, but that's the game. That's the entire thing, whether you're selling a Heineken bottle or your BDO services or flipping telco or whatever the thing is, it doesn't matter. You're trying to convert community into customers through context, but doing it through care. And most small businesses don't have big marketing budgets. And whenever people say, I don't have time for it, it's like, shut your face. I'm busier than you and I can do it. You can too. If they say, I don't have budget, it's like, well, shut your face. I got to, 1.7 million with $0 just by using social with free organic reach. So no, so there's no reason that anyone can't do it. The hard answer that it just takes a shitload of time and a lot of thinking and a lot of commitment to something which you may not see the upside for potentially years to come.
Awesome, Robett. And I think that just highlights, the need for resilience in business and being really mindful. I'm just so pleased to hear that you look at meditation, being mindful of opening your mind to a I can do attitude rather than, no, well, I can't do that because of. I often say to people when they say, no, I can't do that. And I say to them, well, that is true. Yes, you can't do it. You've already said it. You can't, so you can't. And then often they'll get mad with me and they'll go, no, but I can. And I'm like, that's the answer I wanted to hear. So, having meditation to be able to open the mind into the I can do is, one of the ingredients into being resilient in business. Hey, I'm just so grateful for your time today. Grateful for your thoughts. So proud of you as a Ngāti Porou, New Zealander, Maori, living abroad, flying the flag, 250 something podcasts, which during that whole COVID moment in New Zealand, I tuned into a few of them, because there were moments in there that were really tough for all of us in the mental health space. And that just gave light relief. Yeah, light relief, and gave us access to great minds that had different ways of thinking about 101 different things. So, Robett, up to you. Keep going. You're fantastic. I did get a little message one day to say that, because I'm always liking your posts, that I could click this thing and become a top fan. And I was like, I'm a digital immigrant. I was like, what is even that? So I didn't click it because I was like, I don't even know what that is. But I sort of laugh because I think, I look at others that I work with and I'm only in my 40s, but yet I'm such a dinosaur when it comes to tech. But, I look at what you do and where you take it, and just hugely grateful. So thank you for your time.
No, I appreciate it. I'm glad you did touch on the lockdown thing, because it was done by design, because I knew if I didn't do something like that, no one would. And it was because I put myself in the headspace of, if I'm stuck at home and if I'm not mentally strong and if I'm potentially going to lose my job, or if I potentially don't know what's next, or if I don't, where can they go to and what can they do if they don't have a network or someone that's accessible and relatable? And what I know to be true is there's levels of access which give you insight to worlds you don't even flipping know exist. But I know I've got them. So I thought, how can I use this as a moment to essentially leverage my Rolodex of IP to share the thinking and the thoughts in real time for those that they may not be able to talk to see what's going on in their head, to give them breadcrumbs of ideas or positivities or spark or something. And so it was almost like a kind of a weird like audio IP download of the heartbeat of a nation for that 5 weeks. And people don't realize I was going up to 6 hours a day straight, no sponsors, no bullshit, no nothing. And I would sit there all day and just go back to back to back to back to back to back and just hit, and it was idiotically stupid for my time and my energy in terms of the mental load that it actually took was so intense, because your brain the entire time for hours on end is just getting put to fifth gear mentally. And then because I wasn't physically moving as well, it was actually really, really tough, because I wasn't physically moving, but my brain was going for so long, for so many days. It was tough. But man, because I knew what was happening was people were messaging me on the stuff, like my comms with people, like people hit me up all the time, and I communicate with a lot of people that no one even knows about. It's like, great. But when this started happening, the tone was like, yo, I'm stuffed. What do you think I should do? Hey, I'm feeling down. Oh, the shit's going to, like, there was a lot of heavy, bad shit, and I couldn't scale my one-to-one time. So selfishly as well, I wasn't just doing it for the one person that I was talking to. It was for the hundreds, if not thousands, who could get access to those things, to get those breadcrumbs that was scaled value without me in the room. So it was, I'm glad you brought it up, because it was a I'm glad I did it, but it took its toll mentally, because it was tough. But I'm glad that you brought it up, because I know it helped a lot of people, so that makes me feel good.
Yeah, I mean, I always liken it to, Robbie, essentially you were running a marathon day on, day out. You know, your brain is a muscle, and you can only run a marathon for so long. You can't do that forever. And I think it was not long after that you took that month's break of social media, where you deleted all your social media accounts.
It's still off my phone. It's still off my phone. I don't have I don't have any Instagram. TikTok's gone. LinkedIn's gone. Facebook's gone. Twitter's gone. Everything's off my phone. I can't. That's what I was talking about, the consume versus create. It's dangerous.
Yeah. No, and I think you're amazing that you put it out there. And I think other people have those things going on, and until people like you make it safe to have the conversation, your impact is huge, absolutely huge.
Appreciate it.
And
you never
you've run the mental marathon. Thank you.
I'll never know. I've talked about, I don't think I'll realize any of the impact until potentially years. I'm starting to see trickles of it now, but because it's not done on an ROI for commerce, it's done on ROI for people, but a long game, chess game with people to help over the long game. So, you'll never know. But yeah, I appreciate your time, and I'm glad that my tech worked so we could do this, because I don't know if we would have timed up the same way, and I could tell you were in the zone. You had your shit you were going to talk about, and I was like, okay, I'm just jumping in. We're going to flip into it. I was like, done. There you go, boom. So
it's really funny. It's really funny. I always think if you ask the universe for something, it comes. Now, you put a post out a while ago and said you're doing these podcasts. I can't remember the exact wording. You are happy to mentor people to do one for free, send your name, and you're going to hook them up. I said to our team, I was like, we need to do this. Let's do one of these with Robett. Let's not do this webinar. They said, no, our tool is this webinar. So, okay, I'll trust that. But I thought the universe answered my call. We did a podcast instead. So when you sent the link, I was like, let's do it. Let's click and go. The team were like, what? We can't do that. We've just told all our attendees that we're off for the day. It's all right. I'm sure Robett will film it and we can play it again later. So
I am born to break the rules and create them and do them as I go. So I have zero. You have freedom when you genuinely don't give a shit. And when I create something in my head, I just go. And so, look, we just had to do something. We've done it. It's great. So actually, because this has been your show, would you like to finish us off? And then I can give you the full screen experience, and then I can exit on out.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I am going to finish us off with a quick karakia. We opened with one and we should close with one as we transition out of doing the business with Robett today and back into our daily lives as we get back and do what we all do well. So, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou ariki a iwi karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga, ki te wairua tapu, ake, amen.
Okay. Awesome. Just quickly, lastly, Angela Dello, which was the point of this, was actually asking, where and when can we see the results of the survey? So feel free to make your plug right about now, Kylee.
Okay, so you need to go onto the BDO New Zealand website, and in there is a link into the Maori sector, and you'll find your way through to the survey. We're also happy to send it out to anyone who makes contact through the BDO New Zealand website. You're welcome to see it. It is launched live today with me and my good friend Robett. I couldn't have thought of a better person to launch the report with.
Love your work. Hey, great exit. Well done. You made it. All right. Love your work. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, take care, eh?
Cool. See you
Be
soon.
safe over there.
Will do. Thanks, Kylee. All righty. Tech to the rescue. Completed. Done and dusted. Happy with that. Should we finish off with some tracks? Outro. There we go. Put it up there. Kylee from BDO. friend from the East Coast, Ngāti Porou, Gizzy. I was supposed to be on their tech custom fancy webinar today. Technology did not allow us to do so. So we pivoted, made some technical adjustments, sent them a link. Next thing you know, boom, we're on here. This was unplanned. This wasn't supposed to be a public thing like this on my channels, but appreciate that we've got it done. Enjoy the rest of the day, everyone. Be well, be good, and I'll be seeing you all pretty soon. Very cool. Shot team. Love your work. Adios.